Hello, my name is David. What we're looking at here is a turtle shell calendar. Pretty obvious, right? You can see the names of the moons corresponding with what are called different scutes on the turtle shell, um, and this corresponds with the varieties of turtles that we could find around North America. The painted turtle, the Blanding's turtle, even snapping turtles usually have this number, and it is very coincidental. Maybe you could call it coincidental. It dares you to call it coincidental that if you multiply the 13 larger scutes by the number of smaller scutes, 28, then you get 364. So 1 day short of the 365-day calendar, Gregorian calendar that we use. And so for who knows how long, the turtle shell calendar was in use. I will show you, is still going strong. With all due respect to Indigenous traditions, I am not Indigenous. Third generation Canadian on my father's side, second generation Canadian on my mother's side. So I'm a settler through and through. And actually, my interest in the turtle shell calendar didn't actually come about through an interest with Indigenous ideas and cosmologies, although I am very interested in Indigenous studies, and I've been studying Indigenous studies for multiple years, first at the University of Alberta and then at the University of Toronto for my undergrad. Yes, it actually began because I'm interested in turtles. I just like turtles since I was very little. Well, in this one, the days around the exterior are clockwise instead of counterclockwise. So there are many differences between each and every example, and that used to confuse me until I learned about this thing called intercalcation, where time is viewed as malleable, and the instruments that we use to tell time are at our disposal, as opposed to having to stand to attention because the instruments that we use to tell time are telling us what time it is. Right? So there's a difference there, a big difference. And so intercalcation means that we're free to manipulate the instruments that we use to tell time. And so that puts the turtle shell calendar into what's called indicatory time, meaning it shows you indications of time. Other ways you can tell indications of time may be just by looking at the moon, the phase of the moon in the sky, how long it takes for a cloud to pass in the sky, how long it takes for the snow to melt in the spring. When you hear the first clap of thunder in the spring, these are all examples of indicatory time. The spring peepers at the beginning of spring, and then the katydids after the cicadas in autumn. I love how those two examples, by the way, they occupy the same kind of sonic resonance, right? You got the peepers at a very high pitch in the beginning, in spring, and then it goes out with the katydids. Anyway, all right, carrying on. So you can see there are many different names of the moons, and they correspond with suggested activities that might be good for you to partake in. But it's yes, intercalcation is a thing, but these things are decided by timekeepers. It is a person's job or people's jobs to tell others perhaps what moon it is. However, it is very, like I said, we are also able to interact with it. So imagine, very hard for a European to understand, imagine the idea of being able to interact with the instruments that tell us time. Imagine being able to say, this month is my dog sitting moon. Right? I'm dog sitting, so it's a dog sitting moon, Better still if you can decide what moon it is with family or with friends or a larger community. I think it has more meaning that way, rather than conforming it to individualistic norms of present day. So this is a neon Ookomisan turtle shell calendar that I made for a project in Indigenous Studies, and you can see I've got the names of the moons at the side, right? And where would we be? Well, November 16. So probably around here. This would be the larger skewed, would be November. Europe drew on knowledge of space and the heliocentric solar system to create the clock, round as the face of the sun, wherein the minutes orbit the hours, transmuting time into a materiality. May and Thrift, 2003. The more objective time is for us, the more subjective or alienated is the sense of self, which therefore uses time in order to gain something from it. And the greater too is one's awareness of the end of one's own time. Our own sense of separation from time motivates us to try to secure ourselves within it. The only satisfying solution is the essentially religious realization that we are not other than it. All right, we are not other than time. So of course intercalcation should be how it goes. We should be able to manipulate time. We should be able to create time. Time is participatory. So we acknowledge that the land known today as the Algonquin Highlands lies within the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe, including the Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi nations, as well as the Algonquin peoples. These nations are part of the larger Three Fires Confederacy and have lived in relationship with these lands and waters since time immemorial. The territory is part of the Robinson-Huron Treaty of 1815 and remains home to Indigenous communities who continue to uphold their responsibilities as caretakers of the land. We recognize their enduring presence and sovereignty, and we acknowledge the ongoing impacts of colonization. We commit to honoring these relationships and supporting Indigenous resurgence through respectful engagement, education, and action. If you're in Ontario, chances are you're in Anishinaabimowin. So Anishinaabe, meaning the people, Anishinaabimowin or Ojibwe land stretches all the way into Saskatchewan here. I've seen other maps where it extends even further. This is just one example of one band. All right. In Canada, we call Indigenous communities bands. In the USA, they're called tribes. Okay. So this is one band of how many, right? Well, every year in my culture, in popular mainstream culture in Canada, we hear new origin stories for these guys. Santa Claus is either a crazy shaman who does mushrooms and Amanita muscaria mushrooms, and that's why he wears red and white, because the mushroom is red and white, and he hangs those mushrooms on a Christmas tree to dry until they're ready to be eaten, which is why we decorate trees. And I think it was the author Lewis Hyde who put forward this idea. So Santa Claus, the origins of Santa Claus may be Scandinavian or even Norse. Others say, Santa Claus is Germanic. And the tradition of putting trees inside your house is Germanic. It's not something that came from outside of Germany. Don't be silly. The Easter Bunny, same thing. Every year I hear a different story of where the Easter Bunny came from. Though most of them are in Germany, you might hear different variations, different varieties, different origin stories. Something to do with druids, right? The eggs are actually serpent eggs. And Ostra, which, is the origin of the name Easter. Ostra, who I believe is some sort of spirit of the coming spring. I may be wrong. Finds finds a bird with broken wings, and in pity, she tries to transform this bird into a rabbit, but she doesn't have the strength or something, and she ends up creating a rabbit that lays eggs. So anyway, my point is that none of these stories are wrong. Whenever we hear these stories, everybody wants to assert that there is one origin story. Your story's wrong. Christmas trees didn't come from Scandinavia or even north of Scandinavia, Norse territories. It came from Germany. I had somebody arguing with me on the internet saying that. They want monogenesis. It's clean cut, it's nice, it's easy to remember. You only have to remember one fact, right? Christmas trees are from Germany. Nah, sorry. It's polygenesis, okay? There were no borders in those days. There were no borders. People were doing things. Traditions spread. People have always been traveling. Maybe the tradition began in Scandinavia. Maybe it began in Germany. But anyway, within months, within years, it spread. Maybe some people didn't decorate it, but another culture did, and then everybody decorated it. So polygenesis is the more likely answer. And out of respect for the turtle shell calendar, I want to emphasize that polygenesis, rather than diffusion, which is where you can trace it back, polygenesis is how it happened. And not through inference, which is, direct connections between one settlement and another, but through enablement. Enablement means the people adopting this tradition maintain their agency. It is still their agentive decision whether or not to adopt this new technology, the turtle shell calendar. All right, so Haudenosaunee or Iroquois, Oneida, Mohawk, or Himalayan. So everybody knows the story, or at least you've seen art, statues or otherwise, depicting, Lord Shiva doing his meditation under the Kailash mountain, which is in the Himalayas. I believe in Nepal, could be. And underneath Lord Shiva doing his meditation, you've got the world, which is on like a platter. And you've got elephants under that. And then under that, even further down, you have a very large turtle, a world turtle, who I've heard referred to as kurma. But what do you think? Do you think the turtle shell calendar might be related to the Himalayan world turtle, the world on the back of the turtle? So when I lived in Asia, in Indonesia, if there was an earthquake, and I experienced many earthquakes, people would say that the kurma turtle is shifting. I like that. Right? So in Turtle Island, you have the woman falling from the sky, the first woman. She falls from the sky. The birds lower her down onto the back of a turtle. There are many varieties of this story. Anyway, the woman lands on the back of the turtle and she finds some earth. It's a long story. And she makes the world on the back of the turtle. And it comes with a warning, though. If we mistreat the turtle's going to go back underwater, And if you think of that in terms of climate change, well, yeah. But in one of these tellings, they say if the shell of the turtle is covered in blood, then it will go back under the water. It'll just have enough of us being unpleasant and cruel and horrible and just disappear under the water. So not necessarily about pollution, but I mean, it's all related. It's all related, right? So just like in Asia, certain things might annoy kurma, the world turtle, and they will start to shuffle their bodies under the earth and shake the foundations of all of our continents and tectonic plates, and it'll be the end of things. If there is any connection at all, though, what is it? It's not monogenesis, it's polygenesis, right? Because this is not that. Why does it seem somehow disappointing when we cannot reduce something to a single origin? Is it also not incredible that two different ideas may have arisen on separate continents? So wherever these teachings began and however they spread, distance was not the only variable. Coming together under one calendrical system would also require cosmological similarities, linguistic similarities, and perhaps even compatible kinship systems, from Sinha and Bernardes. Where the technology of the turtle shell calendar originated could be less important than how it was adapted, how people made it their own, and its embellishment in different hands at different latitudes. So now we're just talking about its spread around Turtle Island in Central America and maybe even South America. That's pretty speculative, though. So in archaeology, Professor Dean Snow asks, why are most hand stencils, like cave paintings, why are most hand stencils of female hands? All right, so men, holding up your fingers, your ring finger should be longer than your index finger. Women, your ring finger should be roughly equal to or longer than your index finger. So the Ookomisan, the turtle calendar, like I said, it means grandmother in Anishinaabimowin or Ojibwe. But this is the same word for moon. So why call the moon a grandmother? Why do you think? Well, it's because the moon synchronizes feminine cycles, menstrual cycles. They gave us a sense of time that was just longer than night and day, the month. And it allows for all sorts of organization. So there's a lot of speculation, I believe from Professor Dean Snow, that the reason why a lot of these handprints on the walls of caves are of female hands is because it was they were counting the moons. All the way down in Patagonia, people are using the 13 moon calendar, but Iwanisweski does not mention if it was turtle in nature. Did they use the turtle shell or not? Is there a possible Mayan origin? So everybody knows that Mayans were very capable as astronomers, and that gave them great insights into time. They had lunar calendars and solar calendars as well. In modern Mesoamerican languages, the words moon and month are the same. Okay, so that gives you a clue. But according to Iwanisweski, there is no evidence that a lunar calendar was ever used in Central America. So Iwanisweski says no lunar calendars in Central America, no Mayan origin. But then I found the work of Jose and Lloydine Argyles. So according to these scholars, the 13 moon turtle shell calendar was commonly used alongside the more popular solar calendar of the Mayan civilization. The authors recount a playful myth that was used to calibrate the lunar calendar and the solar calendar to compensate for inevitable drift or differences between the two of them, the likes of which I have not read anywhere else. So I'm not going to read it. It's very, very technical. but it's there. And did the Argyles just make this stuff up out of thin air? Highly unlikely. Highly unlikely, right? So they have it all worked out, how the lunar and the solar can come back into sync through a myth where the turtle gets all spun around and has to spin itself back, dial itself back. So that's why I give this slide the heading "Possible Mayan Origin." So I'm sure some of you have heard about Chaco Canyon, a great city that suffered a giant fire, and cultures dispersed after it all burnt down. So did Chaco Canyon in Puebloan, New Mexico collapse outwards like the Mayan Empire? All right. Sorry if I get my terminology wrong with the Mayan Empire. I do get confused whether it's classic Maya or so on. It's been a long time since archaeology. But I do remember that collapsing outwards means, we have this notion that empires collapse and they're done. And that doesn't happen. They collapse outwards. People travel to, their kin, their family in other places, and everything continues, and they bring knowledge with them, including the turtle shell calendar. While some researchers insist that the lunar turtle shell calendar hatched in the American Southwest, others claim it was disseminated from Mesoamerica northwards, Ioannis Wesky. I personally see no reason for a monogenetic account, seeing as cultural flow from Mesoamerica could have been mediated through hubs like Chaco Canyon, then disseminated en masse after collapse. After the Great Fire, the Anasazi merged with the Hopi and Puebloan tribes, among others. The Hopi's lunar calendar likely still carries the teachings of the Chacoans, according to Walton. So in the Southwest, however, perhaps as there are a lack of severe winters, solstices and constellations are relied on much more than the moons. Diffusion, New Mexico to Utah. So as for the city of Chaco Canyon, this was clearly a lunar-oriented locale. Its lunar-oriented architecture trends are perpetuated in Puebloan cultures, focusing on the crescent moon significance in agriculture. Right. Chaco's Chimney Rock Grade House has 2 spires, between which an event known as the lunar standstill occurs every 18.1 years. As does the Cottonwood Falls Great House in Utah, where the same lunar standstill was incorporated into the architecture. Thank you for that, Walton 2012. So you can see there is a sign, potentially, that knowledge was being spread from Chaco Canyon and after the collapse of Chaco Canyon. Right? Chronocide. I just made this word up, but it makes kind of intuitive sense to most people. The erasure of temporal alterity. According to Emil Durkheim, is an anthropologist, the calendar first traces and then shapes that which it is timing. Right, going from indicatory time to reckoning time. It starts out tracing things and then it ends up shaping them. Like the clock, which shifted from time indication to time reckoning long ago. The need for an alternative calendar emerges from the irreconcilability of time indication, such as the first thunderclap of spring peepers, the first red leaves on a tree, or a waxing gibbous moon. and time reckoning, which is durative numerical aided by guide marks or divide marks, or perhaps the reign of a certain president. So how do we reconcile these two things? Intercalcation, as I've already mentioned, time as relationality and not time as reckoning. All right, so we have a new word here, relationality. It's very common, especially in Indigenous Studies. Relationality, not only how people relate to one another, but how people relate to animals and the animals they eat, and the plants that they use from the forest, and seasons, and figures from myth. Relationality is a core concept in Indigenous Studies. Okay, big church day. What do you think that is? Probably Christmas, right? Feast abundantly moon. Another name for Christmas, right? Or Thanksgiving, maybe. Welcoming each other moon. Probably New Year's Eve. That is from Zawano. These are Indigenous names for December, Christmas, and New Year's. Okay, so we can be creative with these. Within reason and with respect. So while the popular name for May and June or June-July may be strawberry moon in Ojibwe, the idea of intercalcation is that you can decide for yourself or with friends and family what the moon means to you. For myself, this strawberry moon has also been my dog sitting moon. Okay, so that was my May, June, July moon of 2025. I was dog sitting in Algonquin Park. Okay, so what is the name of this moon for you? Work of intercalcation is not for the flippant, though, as I said, as one could be blamed for crop failures or worse, which is why there are designated timekeepers. That's from Walton. So around the world, there's this idea that the plants are growing faster as the moon approaches the full moon. And especially on the night of the full moon, that's when the plants really get their begin fruition, begin to grow. It's a growth spurt. This is also observed on some of the largest palm oil plantations in the world, as it is thought that the xylem and phloem of the plants are affected by the moon's tidal effects. And so, just to note, indigenous knowledge sometimes takes thousands of years to find utility through supposedly scientific explanations. Hunters, on the other hand, start counting on full moons, perhaps because of the light of the full moon, which might help them to hunt or fish. Further research is required. Why do hunters start counting on the full moon? Enriching scenes of now. Okay, starting off with a bit of Karl Marx. As Marx predicted, technology, but especially transportation, will turn location into abstraction. We will be alienated from a sense of place by transportation. This was observed when trains first began to crisscross Turtle Island. In contrast, the grandmother calendar, Ookomisan, foregrounds a feminine passivity. That sounds like a negative, but hear me out. A feminine passivity that is a different and more valuable form of inaction, concerned with enriching scenes of now. If time and the Gregorian calendar are seen as automated, objective, or at least contra-subjective, only ebbing slightly to encompass the shift of daylight hours once a year, then the Gregorian calendar, time and clock time, do not need human beings. In denial of the co-constitutive nature of modern temporalities, humanity emerges as great non-participants without a cosmic duty to perform. What would this continent look like if Europeans had imagined their way across the continent before setting off. So before westward expansion, what if we had some unified idea of what we were creating? Or better yet, what if we created together with the original inhabitants of the land, the original stewards of Turtle Island? What if we drew on their artistic traditions? What if we showed those artistic traditions respect instead of actually banning them? You know, this is just formline art from the West Coast, and I say just because it's the example that everybody thinks of when they think of Indigenous art from Turtle Island. But there are so many varieties. And even down in Mexico, going back to the Olmec heads. I don't need to say anything. I showed you. So what is a geography of time? All right, so we have the turtle shell calendar here superimposed over the city of Toronto. And you can see how the large scutes more or less correspond with the subway stations, the little letter M in the downtown circuit. So an example from Peru. So from the Incan Empire, the Temple of the Sun in Cusco, Peru, is the earliest known example of large-scale geography of time. 41 straight lines radiate out from the temple and towards the horizon. The number of days in an Incan year was once 328, so divided by 41 lines, 328 yields 8, which is the number of the days in an Andean week. Furthermore, 328 days would also have accurately measured a full cycle of 12 lunar sidereal months. Thank you for that, Iwan Isweski. So the temple was a calendar, or calendrical. It was a geography of time. If there was a temple with 41 pathways heading out from itself, well, you could follow any of those lines. And perhaps at the end of that line, you'd find other people doing something in relation to that time of the year. Right? So a geography of time. Very natural, not individualistic. You would meet other people doing the same thing. You would do it together. At the Temple of the Sun in Cusco, Peru. So at the end of one moon and the start of the other, followers of Grandmother Calendar could ride the TTC in a counterclockwise orbit around the downtown core, as I have before, merely to connect to the cyclicality of lunar rhythms and to understand the calendar city hybrid. To bring this idea into the public, custom posters could be placed at each station to explain the concept and one's position in the calendar city. So I've already done this. I covered the downtown core with posters in 2024 telling everybody that Toronto is a turtle. Yeah, I mean, you do what you can, right? So if only I could click here, I could show you videos of my friends and I getting together at Bay Station, which is, basically the head of the turtle, if it were a geography of time. The head of the turtle is at Bay Station. We found it like an abandoned food court, and we made music for a few hours on the new moon, which should be celebrated at Bay Station. Think about your commute or your dog walk or a trip you often make. Try to anchor the phases of the moon to this journey. Where is the head of Grandmother Turtle? Where is the tail? Create your own geography of time. It could even be inside of your house, if you have a large enough house. You know, some houses have like a U shape or even a circle. And when you go around that roundabout, think about Grandmother Turtle. Think about lunar orbit. Some more from the Argyles. The Gregorian calendar is a hypnotic spell, which holds all the unresolvable issues of history hidden in its illogical sequence of days, weeks, months, and years. Following this calendar can only lead to the place we find ourselves today, a season of apocalypses, where disaster, ignorance, and error perpetuate themselves in grinding mindlessness. In this lies the rise of the gargantuan, many-headed hydra of materialism, which reduces humans to enslavement, to a material technology, and degrades the planetary environment without hope of any other economic lifestyle options. Turtle says, Turtle Island is now passing out of the dream spell of colonialism into the dream spell of galactic time, the source of all indigenous wisdom and knowing. A dream spell is what we create together in time. Colonialism was one dream spell. The Way of the 13 Moons is another dream spell. So running this neon turtle shell calendar animation on the shoreline of Great Lake Iroquois, which I believe began to dissipate around 14,000 to 11,000 years ago, and there were already people, walking on those shorelines, fishing in the lake at that time. That connection made this more meaningful for me. Anyway, I can link you up to a video of what I've done there. It was a proposal for an installation to replace the ugly statue of John A. Macdonald, which is at the northern end of University Avenue, still enclosed in plywood to stop people from tearing him down. Miigwech, thank you. Once again, I'm not Indigenous, and I'm not pretending to be, okay? With all due respect to indigenous cultures, I hope that I haven't made any mistakes in my presentation here. I hope you've gleaned some information from my ramblings, and yes, thank you for making it this far. Like, subscribe, and comment. All right. So yeah, feel free to reach out if you'd like to read my article on this, the full article. I'll hook you up. All right. Once again, miigwech. Bye.